All right, first off, I want to thank the grace of heaven and the virtues of the masters, mercy of the grand predecessors, transmitting masters, lecturers, everyone here today, for the opportunity to talk about this topic, the spirit of inner qualities of a bodhisattva. Okay, well, this is coming from a Chinese topic. Okay, so, but anyways, we talk about bodhisattvas a lot in cultivation, but it's very important to understand what it is, what a bodhisattva is, what's their the spirit, what's their spirit basically, spirit of cultivation, or and kind of their qualities, so because our path of cultivation in the Tao, or in Ten Tao, or Heavenly Tao, Heavenly Way, okay, is the same as the path of the Bodhisattvas, okay, so the Bodhisattva Way. So as opposed to the Arhat, okay, so we'll talk a little bit about that. Now, all right. Okay, so now people, they worship, the saints of religions, in religions, and also other deities, all over the world. Okay, so you have different, saints and deities that people worship. Now, among the at least in the East, right? In the Eastern traditions, basically, we have bodhisattvas. Okay, so that's more specifically that comes from the Buddhist tradition, but we also use or talk about bodhisattvas. But really, a lot of you can say that they're similar to like the saints in Christianity, I guess. Kind of similar. But and then also in Eastern traditions, in the Taoism, then they also have these what they call immortals. But basically, it's also you can say that they're also bodhisattvas. Okay, so it's kind of like a class of being, enlightened being. Okay, awakened being. All right. So, so at least in the Eastern religions, people worship because there are lots of bodhisattvas. They're probably countless. We know of the more. I guess there's some more well-known ones, like the great bodhisattvas, the mahasattvas, including like Guanyin Bodhisattva, or Siddhigarbha, who's in the underworld, Maitreya, for example, or then you have Manjushri, Samantabhadra, etc. Okay, so there are a lot of them, and more that we don't even know the names of or don't know about. Okay, so but so it depends on people who they worship. Is, you can say, has to do with affinity. If they have a certain affinity with a particular bodhisattva, they might, so some people, they have a statue of Guanyin at home, and then they worship, or they might have a Maitreya, a happy Buddha, Maitreya Buddha, or some other Buddha or bodhisattva. Okay, so this, and it's okay. It's just that, but it's important that we know, who it is. For most people, they're looking for, in worshiping the bodhisattva. Okay, obviously they establish or continue this affinity with them, but their goal is typically to gain some kind of, blessing or protection from the bodhisattva, right, for themselves and their families. Okay, and that's typically what people are looking for, right? It's always requesting something, from the bodhisattva. Now, okay, so So now they are worshipped by many people, but how many people actually know what makes a bodhisattva? What is a bodhisattva? Okay, so what is the bodhisattva spirit? Right? Now it's important also that we don't blindly follow people in worshiping, right? Because without knowing who or what is being worshipped, or, putting their faith or the belief in. Okay, so that's a dangerous thing, right? Again, this is blind faith or, blind worship, blind practice is kind of a dangerous thing. It's just, someone said, this is a good thing. Yeah, I want to just do it, we have to use our wisdom, right? What comes to mind is like cults. Okay, people end up in these cults because they don't know what they're getting into, So that's dangerous. And well, not just even, just in the various religious practices and besides the mainstream, major religions, and, then you have all these other offshoots and other sects, which, or even modern ones, Scientology comes to mind as something, a very modern, kind of, a doctrine or belief or whatever. But, and some people say that's kind of like a cult too. But anyway, but there are these things. All right. So, now for us, we've received the Tao, obviously we should not just blindly follow others. Obviously, once we receive the Tao, we should know that, what we are, actually, we're not really worshiping. Okay. That's what the common people do. As cultivators, we're really not worshiping. Okay. We obviously, we revere, we respect, the Buddhas and saints, bodhisattvas. But we are really, what we do is learn, obviously, take from their teachings, their guidance, and try to emulate, actually follow those teachings. Okay. So in following those teachings is basically, we try to emulate, the bodhisattva. All right. So we have to, kind of study and understand the spirit and conduct of the bodhisattvas, and also, the excellence of this Tao temple or Tao field, okay, that we're in. Okay, so, but I mentioned earlier about these cults and offshoots and whatever, you can say these are they're the heterodox, the non, the true, or you can say they deviants from the true path. So even in the Tao, though, we have to also be careful. It's like mentioned before about we know that there's only our lineage. It ends on the 18th patriarch, or actually there's a total of 64 patriarchs. So there aren't any more. But those who claim, they're in the Tao, but they claim to have more patriarchs, then, we have to be careful. We have to avoid that. Okay, so again, so this is not just talking about the outside, the general religions out there, but also within the Tao. Okay, so again, we have to be wise, be careful. Okay, so the Bodhisattva takes on the form that is suitable to fairy sentient beings. So when basically like a Buddha or a Bodhisattva, enlightened being, because they've already transcended. They've really transcended this cycle of birth, death, rebirth. But whenever they come back, and are born in this world, it's what's called a transformation body, or a nirmanakaya is the Sanskrit term. Basically, and they can have infinite, you can say basically, limitless types of this transformation body. They can take on any kind of form, if you will, living form in the world. And it's out of expediency. it's whatever is suitable, right? Whatever is appropriate to, if they're trying to obviously to ferry humans, usually, it would be born as a human, so that, obviously we can communicate and all that. Now, if they're trying to save or help, some animals, they can also be born as an animal to be among those animals. They can speak their language. So, and then try to help those, save those animals. Obviously we don't know too much about that. But certainly as humans, so they can, so it's not that they would always appear as what we might think, or our view of what Buddha or Bodhisattva may, let's say, look like. Okay, so it's not like that. I mean, it can be anything. They appear as, if you've seen in the Seven Taoist Masters, those immortals, they can appear as a beggar. Okay, so and if that's the appropriate thing to do. Okay, so yeah, we shouldn't, because we can tend to have like a stereotype of what we believe they should look like, or, what kind of appearance they should have, or what form they should have. Okay. Now, Sakyamuni Buddha himself, he was a bodhisattva. Okay. But he took on an appearance of a monk. Okay. So, and then, obviously this was his final, you can say his final rebirth in the world, before he attained nirvana and becomes a Buddha. Okay, so, but he was a monk. He was basically, in practice, he was like any other monk. Okay, so right, because he also begged for alms and stuff like that, and did exactly what all the other monks did. So he wasn't, he didn't appear as a special person, and say, I'm a Buddha or a Bodhisattva, and so you have to treat me differently. No, so it's not like that, right? But what Buddha taught was the way of the Bodhisattva. Okay, the Bodhisattva way. And even, okay. So, now there are others who, like Vimalakirti. Okay, so there's even, there's a Buddhist sutra that's from his teachings, basically, even though he was actually not even a monk. Okay, so Vimalakirti, he did not join the monastic order. He was kind of like you can say a lay cultivator, or common. But he was actually a bodhisattva. Okay, that was his transformation body. Okay, as this person Vimalakirti. Okay, so, and then you have Siddhana, Bhadrapala, etc. Okay, so there are many bodhisattvas who didn't become monks. Okay, so we have to kind of in a sense, then this is kind of also teaching us that not to be attached or stuck on forms and appearances. Okay. Now, in the White Era, that's the time that we're in now, since the 17th, 18th patriarch, the Chinese saying is, 在家出家. Okay, so it literally means to be at home or living at home, and, 出家refers to like monks. Okay. So to be a monk living at home. All right. So it's cultivate at home, basically. But we are still practicing the Bodhisattva way. So it's kind of like Vimalakirti and those, who did not become monks, but they're still practicing the Bodhisattva way. So that's kind of how we are, today. The Bodhisattva way is if you remember, there's like the three vehicles of cultivation, right? The lower, the middle, and the higher, or the upper. Okay, I guess it's the smaller, medium, and then the bigger, the larger one. Okay, so the Bodhisattva way is the larger vehicle, or the superior vehicle of cultivation, right? It's because it is really the only true dharma that can get us to nirvana, to Buddhahood, the quickest. Okay, it's the most, you can say, the most direct, straight path to that end point, to that goal, right? So now, the Bodhisattva, okay, so practices according to the environment, right? They can take on infinite transformation bodies to fairy sentient beings. Okay, so, right. So for us, we are, if we all became monks, like, for example, then usually our interaction with the general public would be more limited. Okay, so, but today, since we are cultivating as, you can say, common people, as a lay person, then we have, because of our affinity with various people around us, through our work, our school, our families, etc., our friends, we interact and encounter these people, that we can also try to, ferry them. Okay. So, or at least establish good affinity, well, ideally this like Bodhisattva or Buddha affinity with them, and then so that one day, they can be ferried. Right. So that's kind of the goal. All right. Okay. So like I said again, okay. So in the white era, the cultivators are immersed in the world, right? So we're not living isolated in a monastery. We're living within society, right? The ideal, of course, is to establish this pure land. Okay, what Buddhism they call this pure land in this world. So you can say paradise on earth, or heaven on earth, or from Confucius, his ideal is he describes as calls it the world of great harmony, and it's also the aim or the purpose of Tao, or at least in terms of the practice of the Tao that we're in now. So that's the goal, is to create. It's not just to transcend this cycle of birth, death, rebirth, reincarnation, but also while we're still here to transform the world into something where there's peace and harmony and unity. Okay, so obviously that's a very tall order. If we see how the world is today, it's obviously nothing close to that. And the Tao community throughout the world is I don't know, it's probably at most a few percent of the population. Okay, so it's it would take I don't know. I mean, it would take some drastic changes, for something like that for us to achieve this goal. Okay, this ideal, and that's why, well, some of the sutras that we talked about in the past and the scriptures, they say, well, so there's this kind of this great Armageddon, the end of the world, so to speak, to kind of cleanse the world, if you will, of all the evil elements, so that then you're left with the cultivators, the good cultivators. Okay, so, at the basic level, we can say that, when we receive the Tao, okay, it is called, in the Chinese, it says 明心见性. Okay, so basically to, truly understand the mind, right, and to see our essence or the true nature. Okay, or you can say it's, clear, bright mind. Okay, so, but anyways, basically at the moment when the transmitting master opened the gate, right, our wisdom eye, the third eye, then at that moment we are one. We are connected. We are one with, well, you can say we are one with Tao. We are one with God. Okay, at that moment, but the thing is, most people lose that. You can say lose that link, lose that connection afterwards. Okay, so it's just that at that moment, we are, because we're not, we have no you can say we have no attachment that way. It's like our mind is completely clear and blank, okay, at that moment. And then that's how we can establish that connection. But then afterwards we start, going back to our old way of thinking, our mind, etc., heart, mind, then, we kind of lost that connection. Okay. So although that gate is open, okay. So that's akin to basically, right, we have that true nature, that essence, which is bright, right? It's like the source of light. It's like the sun, okay, within us. And, but we're all covered up, okay? So, but when we see the Tao, opening that gate is basically, it's like puncturing that shell that we built around us, okay? The shell, put a hole in it, and that inner light can now shine out, but it's very small hole. Okay. So we have to, it's like the, I guess the baby chick that's in the egg that's got to peck his way out of the shell, to get out. Right. And so that's what we have to do. Okay. So we're like that little baby chick inside. There's a little hole now, but now we have to widen that hole. Okay. All right. Now, so even though, we know that we have the Buddha nature, right? We know that we must get rid of our bad temper and habits and our attachments, right? We have to go through this process of cultivation to achieve it, to become one with our essence. Okay, so practically speaking, though, we are actually not even close to achieving that, you can say, seeing that true nature, okay, or being one with our true nature, okay. Okay, so now our cultivation, like I said, it's not like an arhat, but like a bodhisattva. An arhat is basically one who cultivates for themselves. Okay, so it's basically self-cultivation, self-awakening, self-awareness, but not really trying to help others to awaken or to cultivate. Okay, so that's really the big difference. Whereas a bodhisattva, besides awakening, themselves and cultivating themselves, they're also helping others, to guide others, to awaken them, as well. Okay. Okay. So now, it's not to say that, we must get rid of, our bad temper and habits and have a perfect character. We commonly talk about the internal and external cultivation, right? As if they are two different things. Therefore, we might think that we can emphasize one over the other. The Arhat path, right, focuses on the internal, basically what we would say is the internal cultivation, because it's basically not dealing with others. Although in the white era, right, because in this white era we have this universal salvation mission, right? So there is an emphasis on the external aspect, right, to try to save, to ferry all other sentient beings. So this is the Bodhisattva path. Ferrying sentient beings is the mission, and it's of great importance. So many predecessors have achieved immortal and bodhisattva status, right, or become a bodhisattvas as a result. Okay, so this proves the you can say the extraordinariness or superiority of receiving the Tao first and then cultivating after. Okay, so this is something that we do today, whereas in the past, right, they had to cultivate and prove themselves that they are pretty much enlightened before they can receive the Tao. So we're kind of the opposite, because we're not enlightened. We're not even close to. We don't have that kind of wisdom where we're enlightened, close to being enlightened. So, but because of the grace of heaven, mercy, the Buddhas, that we can actually receive this Tao first, and then gradually cultivate for the rest of our lives, okay, to try to achieve that final goal. But we must not forget cultivation right after receiving the Tao, because receiving the Tao alone is not enough, and we've talked about this in previous classes. It is our duty to ferry others, but we must also ferry ourselves, right? Otherwise, it becomes like the blind leading the blind. If we can't ferry ourselves, we're incapable of ferrying ourselves. If we don't have that wisdom, we're incapable of really cultivating ourselves well, then how can we really ferry other people? So that's why, despite the fact that, there is, we need to do the external, but we also have to do the internal. And so it's really one. Okay, the practice really involves both. When you have kind of the inside, the outside, both halves come together to practice together as one. Okay, that's the Tao. Okay. So anyways, we start from practicing the Tao of humanity that we talked about before. Basically, the how we become basically what Confucius would call a 君子. It's like the superior human. Okay, so the humane practice. Okay, to achieve this Tao of heaven. Okay, that we're because we are in the human world, we have to become excellent human beings. All right, and we have to go from self-awakening and awareness to awakening others. Okay, so that's the key here. Okay, so what is Bodhisattva? 10 Tao. We call this 10 Tao. Okay, so heavenly Tao, heavenly way. Okay, is the Bodhisattva Path, right? So Bodhi, if we take these two parts of the word, Bodhi means basically, you can say self-awakening, awareness. Okay, so it's basically doing things according to the heavenly heart and mind. Okay, not the human heart and mind and desires of the human heart and mind. Okay, so it's following, you could say, following the conscience, but it's coming from that essence, that true nature, the Buddha nature. Okay, so, and you can say the wisdom, okay, from that. So anything that is, based on or coming from our ego, then that's the human heart and mind and desires. Okay, so that's not it. All right. And it comes through, and the Bodhi, also applies, there's this constant self-reflection, so introspection, right? Not repeating the mistakes, faults, or sins, of the past, right? So because if we can reflect on ourselves and take the criticisms of others, and suggestions of others, and incorporate that and correct ourselves and rectify our conduct and everything in all ways, then that's then we won't repeat the same mistakes, faults, and sins from before. And we also not seeking externally or seeing the faults of others. So we're not seeking anything from the outside, from others, and we also, because through the we should always be self-reflecting rather than looking at and seeing the faults of others. Okay, which is the easy thing to do that we that we all it's kind of a trap that we sometimes fall into. We have to be aware of that. We have to be careful and catch ourselves and not do that. Okay, so sattva. The other half of the word is basically, you could say it's like the affinity and with and consideration for others, okay, or the awakening of others. Okay, so we really we have to consider others, other living beings, other beings as ourselves, or as one. Okay, we are one with them. Okay, so there is no difference. And that essentially, that's what the golden rule is trying to say is, it doesn't say that directly, but it's, you treat others as you would treat yourself. So basically, that's saying the same thing, basically. Okay, so that's the two halves of it. And so we should be like basically the sun that shines equally on all parts of the world. So we, no discrimination, no bias, that kind of thing, right? Okay, so the Bodhisattva then is basically to they rectify themselves, oneself, and also help others to achieve. So we cultivate ourselves. And then we also help others to achieve in their cultivation. And also we awaken ourselves and also awaken others, right? So in contrast, of course, the Arhat only basically emphasizes the first part, the self part, the self-awakening, but doesn't really try to awaken others. Now, so self-awakening and awareness is to be aware of one's true nature, right? Our essence. and virtues, and manifest them brightly like the sun. And then we must also awaken others and shine our virtues on others. Okay, so obviously, what good is it if we have great virtue, but we don't, it's not used to help others. Okay, help others to become enlightened, to awaken. All right. So this is the major difference between Arhat and Bodhisattva. Okay, so sorry. Okay, so the Bodhisattva spirit, first, we have to ask, what is a compassionate and merciful heart and mind, right? Because we talk about Bodhisattvas being, they're Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are being very compassionate, right? So this compassion, this merciful heart, mind, okay, what is it? Okay, so it's basically, to be happy and to rejoice with others. Like Maitreya Buddha, for example, he's always happy, like a happy-go-lucky kind of guy, if you will. I mean, but he's not disturbed by anything. Okay, and so and it also we take away the suffering of others, like Guanyin Bodhisattva. Okay, so right, her. I guess the model, if you will, is when she hears the cries of people sentient beings needing help, then she goes and tries to rescue them or save them. Okay, so but that actually gets to the essence of what a bodhisattva is, or what this compassion is. Okay, so where does this come from, right? So compassionate heart and mind is basically it's also unable to bear the harm that to others. Okay, but unable to bear that others can be harmed. Okay, so again, because it's like if others are being harmed or suffering, then it's the same as I am being harmed or suffering, right? So compassion is expressing the pity for and the urgent desire to alleviate suffering of others. So it's not just like sometimes people say, sympathy, empathy, these things are pity. Okay, so that's only like half of what compassion is, right? Compassion is not just that, but also having that urgent desire to alleviate or, alleviate the suffering of others or, trying to get them out of that suffering state. Okay, because when they're suffering, the bodhisattva is suffering. Okay, we're suffering as well. Okay, so that's very important to understand what compassion is. Okay, now, so why is it that most people really we don't really or we're not able to express compassion really? It's because of basically. You can say the selfishness or the selfish, that we're, argumentative or we dispute things or whatever, and we're also possessive. Okay, so it's all having to do with the ego. Now, basically what this does then is it covers up and it blocks our heavenly or divine heart and mind and our divine nature. Okay, the Buddha nature, true nature. All right. So remember, we have that shell. We've created that shell around us. That shell is created by that ego, okay? And that blocking that light that's inside. And so we need to break out of that shell, break down that shell, okay? So through consideration for and giving to others, then we can get rid of attachment to the ego, right? And the term is atmagraha, okay? So, but yeah, so definitely, cultivation practice is, you can say one of the key points is that we have to get rid of that ego. Okay, remember that's part of the four images, right? The image of self, basically that ego, right? Of others, of sentient beings, and of basically this lifespan that we think we have this lifespan. Okay, so it's common thread, and if we cannot get rid of the ego, it would be very we cannot become a true Bodhisattva, okay, and a Buddha, right? So that's something that we have to keep in mind all the time, and always be aware of whenever our ego is is kind of rearing its ugly head, and we have to kind of get rid of it. All right. Okay. So what is this distinguished quality? Compassion, right? It's kind, loving, gentle, merciful, humane, right? It's also unconditional, great love and dedication. Okay, so it's like a mother's affection for her child, right? That the mother is, there's this great, I don't know, this yeah, I guess you can say it's like this compassion, okay, that affection, that the mother has for the child. The mother will do anything for the child, right? Especially when it comes to the welfare or the safety of the child. Mother will even sacrifice her life for the child. Okay, so that is what a bodhisattva would do as well for sentient beings. Okay, so obviously the mother's affection for her child is only for her child, and it doesn't really include other people, right? So, but the bodhisattva then is basically, has that same kind of affection, if you will, towards all sentient beings, right? Okay, so that's really broadening that circle to include all living beings. Sympathy. Okay, so so the next thing, so the first one was tsu, okay, and then the second one is bei. Okay, so these two words kind of go together to form the word compassion, you can say. Okay, so the second one, sympathy, pity, and a desire to help. Okay, so to love others as oneself, right? Again, we are one. We are one because there is only there is that essence which is the same, which is one in everyone. This nature. Okay, so there is no distinction. Okay, so it's like the drop of water. I mean, everyone is a drop of water, but they're all part of the ocean, and therefore it's one ocean. Okay, there's only one ocean. All right, so there's no distinction. And okay, so then it's not to seek comfort and joy for oneself, but to wish all beings can be free from suffering. Right? That's really what Bodhisattva would like to see. That's their wish, that is their hope, that all sentient beings, all living beings can be free from suffering. Okay. So this is the spirit of, wanting to free all beings from suffering, right? To free them from the shackles of suffering goes one step beyond and is basically the white era cultivator's mission. So it's not just, alleviating the suffering. I mean, the suffering at different levels, right? You can say, at the physical level, at whatever level. But, there are different, I guess, ways to kind of alleviate their suffering in those, for those, different ways. Okay. But really our goal is or what we're trying to alleviate the suffering is the suffering of birth, death, rebirth, reincarnation, right? To be caught up in this samsara. This is the ultimate goal, okay, is to leave this type of, this great suffering, if you will, the cycle of suffering, okay, not just in this one life, right? So that's we should also realize that. So just like, so Guanyin Bodhisattva, of course, right? So she responds to the cries of sentient beings for help. And also like Siddhigarbha, right? He wants to deliver all the souls from hell, right? Because they're suffering in hell too, those souls. And he wants to deliver them from that suffering. And so that's why he teaches the Dharma in the underworld. But it's not, it's only for those who basically, they have to have that affinity, of course. It's not all the souls. It's only those who have the relation in the human world who receive the Tao, right? And we talked about this before. So, but anyways, okay. Okay, so the power of Bodhisattva vows, right? Achievement of the Bodhisattva comes from the power of vows as the driving force and as is the objective. Okay, so, it's just like a boat. that has no rudder, right? Or a horse that has no reins, then, it's kind of dangerous. Basically, you can charge ahead, but you have no control of your direction. Okay. So, the thing is, okay, so also with the vows, right? The greater the vows, the greater the power. Okay. So we've talked about this before, previous class. Without vows, the objective becomes unclear, right? The vows essentially, it's kind of like a goal as well. Okay. So it's the objective. And without the support of the power of the vows, then we inevitably retreat in the face of difficulties, right? So that's why, you can say some people, they have that strong faith and that keeps them going, through in the face of all, difficulties. Okay. You can say that. That's also, but the vows, give us, and I guess people can kind of maybe derive strength from their faith, okay? Even maybe without the vows, maybe without vows, okay? But if we do make vows, that is also indicates that we also have a strong faith, and not only that, then there's also this power in the vows themselves, because the vows are similar to the vows that bodhisattvas make, that they take, okay? So, then therefore, it's like, because it's essentially we're trying to achieve the same goals or objectives as the bodhisattvas, therefore they're going to help us, okay? So that's why there's that extra power. Okay. So, so the bodhisattvas, they all have, great vows, and they've achieved their great achievements, you can say, come from their great vows, right? And, in the past, we've already mentioned, these various bodhisattvas, they have like, Guanyin or Avalokitesvara has like 12 great vows. Siddhikarma has 72 great vows. Manjushri has 141 great vows. And Samantabhadra has 10 great vows. Okay. So, it's not the number of vows necessarily, but it's just, it's really how great each of those vows are, and that we maintain, that we continue to pursue, you can say, to achieve those, basically the objective set by the vow. Okay. So, as long as we never give up on them, as we keep pushing to achieve them, to fulfill them, then those are great vows. Okay. Of course, these vows are they're not like selfish vows. Okay. So these are vows to like help sentient beings, right? Okay, so so what's so the requirements for bodhisattva achievement, right? It's always to be in consideration of sentient beings, or you can say always thinking of sentient beings. Okay, without knowing or understanding the suffering of sentient beings, right? How can one develop the compassionate heart? Okay, so we have to understand the suffering, right? So if you ask an average person, are people suffering? They'll point out, those people in those war-torn areas, they're suffering. People, there are people starving out there, things like that. But, that's kind of the conditions, mundane type of material type conditions. Okay. So, but that's not really what, we have to understand that suffering again is, you could say delusion, okay, is one of them. Ignorance, delusion, okay, that people are deluded, or sentient beings are deluded into thinking that, well, this is the reality, this is the world, this is the ultimate reality we're living in. But whereas really it's a dream, we're only living in a dream, or even, maybe it's a nightmare, okay, but that the suffering is really the suffering of this constant, because of the ignorance and delusion and attachments that we suffer through, life after life after life, continuously. So that is that cycle of birth, death, rebirth, and that is the ultimate suffering. And so, we have to know that, right? Once we realize that, then yes. So obviously we will, then we can have that, inspire that compassionate heart, to want to try to save sentient beings, to awaken them to the fact that, yeah, they are suffering, they're going to be constantly, in this cycle, in the samsara, suffering, okay, if they don't wake up, if they don't get rid of their ignorance, okay, or delusions. So the Bodhisattva must always consider the suffering of sentient beings as one's own suffering as well, okay, so it's not just, okay, it's easy to say, oh, okay, that's their suffering, and my suffering is different. I can try to resolve my suffering, but we have to view it as all sentient beings' suffering is the same as my suffering. Okay. With the great pitying vow to save all beings comes great power to destroy all demons and resolve all grievances. So again, having this, the great vows that we make, or that bodhisattvas make, that there is a lot of power behind it, to achieve, to get, the demons and, you can say like evil, those are like obstacles, okay? So it can kind of get rid of those obstacles, okay? From our path here and for us to achieve our goal. Okay, so, so we want to rejoice in giving, okay? Bodhisattva giving is the inspiring of the pitying vow without motive or reluctance, okay? So they're willing and, not, reluctant to do it. And there's no other motive, no other agenda, behind it, or other type of intention. It's just when we can see that sentient beings are happy and not suffering, then we are also happy as well. Okay, so we can rejoice in that. And also only with, relinquishment, right? Are we willing to give up comfort and happiness, right? Even if encountering setbacks, we will not retreat. Okay, so if we are, in essence, you can say, willing to sacrifice, okay, so that from the common person's point of view, they'll say, oh, it's a sacrifice, okay? You have to give up something, that's, you're comfortable with or that you like or whatever, that's a sacrifice. But, we don't generally that's why I don't think, I would use the word sacrifice per se, because it sounds kind of like a negative thing that, oh, you don't, why sacrifice? Okay, so basically, but we have to be willing to give up that comfort and happiness. Okay, so for others, to like I said, the mother is willing to kind of give what she can to her child so that the child does not suffer, while the mother may endure suffering as a result. Okay, and obviously, so from the third, from an outsider looking at it, that's the mother is making a sacrifice. But again, okay, so and so if we're able to do that, then anytime there's a setback or there's difficulties, we won't retreat, right? Because we're willing to endure that. Okay. So this is, basically this is kind of part of the 4 immeasurable minds, right, of a bodhisattva, rejoicing and relinquishment. Okay. So this, again, a bodhisattva, has those, 4 immeasurable minds. Okay. So this is part of that. The benefit all sentient beings, all beings. Okay, so bodhisattva giving is not blind either. All right, so although we try to help, we give. Material giving, for example, is very limited, and it's in its effectiveness. Right, can easily let beings degenerate because they might start to depend on that. Right, they rely on that material giving, and then they don't really try to lift themselves out of whatever their situation is. And so this is like a very short term, and most, you have organizations throughout in society, including religious, organizations that do this type of charity, right? That help, people in materially. But it's better to give the Dharma or the teaching, the principles, to guide people to the principles and the way of the Tao so that they can nurture their wisdom life so that they can be liberated as the fundamental way of salvation, right? So that is the more long-term thing. So it's like, you can give a person food and they can eat for a meal, or you can teach them a skill and then they can stand on their own feet and take care of themselves afterwards. So for the rest of their lives, right? So that, in terms of, what's better, obviously in some cases, if they are starving, if they don't have that meal, and they're going to starve to death, then of course you provide them that meal. But if that's not imminent, then, it's better to definitely, in any case, you still want to kind of teach them, okay, guide them. Okay, so, and then, so this is part of the 4 great vows, to save all sentient beings and extinguish all afflictions. Okay, so again, and those stem from the 4 immeasurable minds. Okay, so again, this is the characteristics, qualities of Bodhisattva, right? Okay, and I also have wisdom and courage, right? The wise are not confused, right? Can break through inner ignorance and untie the knots of confusion in others. Okay, so as we have that wisdom, we are able to not just, get rid of our own ignorance and delusions, but also help clear up any confusion in others. Okay, and that's something that, I think we all wish we had that wisdom, and actually we do have it. It's just that we haven't really found it. Okay, let's put it that way. That we do have it. We just haven't found it. And basically to get that wisdom, to manifest that wisdom, to find that wisdom, is to really, we get rid of that ego, get rid of our preconceptions, our biases, our false views, all that. We have to get as we start working on getting rid of all those things, and our attachments, desires, all these things, even, we have to temper our emotions. Then that wisdom will naturally kind of float to the top. It will percolate up and out, and it will reveal itself. Okay, so, all right. And then, so the courageous are fearless, right? Can calmly face difficulties and accomplish great tasks, right? So we have to have courage in doing what we're doing, in cultivation, in propagating the Tao. We have to be fearless. If we start fearing, I'm afraid of whatever, we have to, obviously, this is not saying that we take unnecessary risks. Okay. So obviously, other things we have to take into consideration, but beyond that, we should, just be courageous and do what we need to do, and face all the difficulties, calmly, so that we can, and only in that way can we really accomplish some great, make some great achievements, right? The cultivator, the Bodhisattva Way must be both wise and courageous in order to dispel the dangers and difficulties and to guide sentient beings to the other shore, right? So, we can't have a timid, someone who's afraid as a leader, right? So, as a guide, all right? So, obviously, we're going to be at the front leading sentient beings and guiding sentient beings. Therefore, we must have that courage and have that wisdom to be able to guide them, right? Okay. Also, we should never stop learning. Okay. The heart and mind of the Bodhisattva must be adaptable to changing times and conditions, right? So basically, just like cultivation is different, right? The way of cultivating is kind of different from the past than it is now, because, the times have changed. The situations are different right now. Again, we're not monks. Okay. So we're not, cultivating like monks would cultivate, right? We're cultivating in the real, I say the real world, but within society now. Okay. So in interacting with people, okay, all this. So it's a different type of cultivation. So we have to adapt. We have to know we can't be stuck on, it says, it's done this way. And that's the way it was when, written in the scriptures or sutras back then. But, that's kind of following the letter of you can say the teachings or the guides. But we have to follow really the intent or the principle, okay, and then apply that in a different situation, right? So, we can't always, cannot always and never follow the rules of the letter, right? So again, we have to be adaptable to, again, also use our wisdom, not just say, change it any way we like, but we follow the original intent, follow the principles. Okay, again, using the wisdom to apply the principles in different situations. So that's being adaptable, adapting to these situations. So we have to study. Therefore, we have to study and learn to use new methods to adapt to new circumstances and the ever-changing heart and mind of sentient beings. Right, to be in harmony with all beings. So, right. So, it's no good if, even though let's say I know all the dharmas, but I can only explain it in one way, okay? And well, maybe 1% or maybe even less than 1% of people will understand the explanation. So what about the other 99+%? So we have to. We can't be stuck on, it's just this way, okay, or it has to be this way. This is the way I explain it, and that's the only way. No, we have to be, again, flexible, adaptable, use our wisdom to accommodate, to be in harmony with the beings, okay, so with others, right, so that they can then accept it, right. So this is, also part of 4 Great Vows, to master all dharmas, right. So, okay, okay. All right, so in both Bodhisattva cultivation, okay, so we know it's the 6 paramitas we've talked about in more detail before, but this is kind of a review, you can say. So basically, the first in giving, okay, so overcomes miserliness and stinginess. It means also relinquishment, okay, giving up of something, right? There are 3 types, right? Material giving, dharma giving, and fearless giving. Okay, so the first, so giving is the first and also the foundation of the 5 paramitas. Okay, the other 5 paramitas, right? If we can basically give without form and without attachment, basically, then we have achieved the basics of the other 5 paramitas. In other words, so through giving, if we can achieve this, giving without form and attachment, then basically we've already also included the other 5 paramitas in this practice. Okay, so that we've achieved that. Now, bodhisattva giving is to give even when it is difficult to give up, right? So a lot of times we say, okay, I'm willing to give, you can say, well, okay, $10, okay, so, or, but I'm not willing to give, $100, for example. So this is just a matter of degree, you can say. But a bodhisattva is willing to give even when it seems like difficult. So it's something like, something precious to me, or has, in whatever way, sentimental or other ways that it's precious to me, and I'm not willing to give it up. So, but the bodhisattva should be able to give that up. Okay, so it's like, like a body part, right? Who wants to give up an eye? So like Sariputra, gave up his eye to heal an illness. Buddha's in his previous life, he gave up his body to feed an eagle, etc. So there are many stories. That's probably within the Chataka's tales, but, or Guanyin, okay, story of Guanyin, right? She had to kind of give some of her flesh, and I think it was her eye as well, to, basically, or at least the doctor is saying that, to heal her father, okay, so she was willing to sacrifice that. And so that's a great sacrifice. I think most people, will not be able to do that, right? but this is what a bodhisattva is willing to do. Okay, so that's something if something to think about, right? And precepts, okay, is to basically overcome lust and evil thoughts or intentions, right? So, the five basic precepts are no killing, stealing, lust, delusion, or, falseness, whatever, in intoxicants. Okay, so, it actually, and the precepts also, apply basically, to, basically the improper conduct of the body, or our actions, the mouth or the words, and also the mind or our thoughts. Okay, so at the three levels, right? And then there are other, you can say precepts. There are a lot of them, because they also include other things like the 15 temple rules and regulations, the 3 distinctions for proper conducts. Okay, this we've all touched upon in past classes. And then observing the precepts is like observing the rules of the road, right? So it's like, they're following the traffic laws, right? If we don't follow, if we drive any way we want, then there's likely to be an accident. Okay, so we have to, so it's likewise in cultivation. Without these precepts, it's dangerous. Okay, how we cultivate, we can deviate. Okay. All right. Sorry. Okay, so, and the next paramita is the forbearance, right, to overcome anger and resentment, right? There's actually 3 types. There's the regular patience, what we typically say is patience, and then there's patience acquired through the Dharma, and then there's also patience in the faith in no rebirth. Okay, so that's, you can say it's like the highest level of the patience. Okay, basically, forbearance it's a true skill in cultivation, right? We have to basically, patience through the Dharma, right, overcomes illusions and delusions, and is able to bear patiently any kind of external hardships. Okay. Now, forbearance takes true skill, right? Without tempering, refinement, and forbearance, anger could easily arise, right? So there's the saying, an instant of ignorant anger burns up the forest of merit. So even though let's say we are performing good deeds, we are performing merit, supposedly we are accumulating merit. Again, this is true merit is, without attachment, etc. Then, okay, so we do have this merit. But if we fail in our forbearance, we get angry, then we lose a lot of that merit. Okay, so have to be very careful. Keep that in mind before we get angry. Okay. Forbearance, right? We must reach the 3rd type to be considered as achieving true forbearance, right? So this is really the patience, if you will, to achieve transcendence from this cycle of life, death, rebirth. Okay, so it's not just forbearing a little bit of, difficulty here and there throughout life, but it's to be able to forbear or endure anything, knowing that if we can do that, we can transcend. Okay, at the end of this life, we can actually achieve the goal of transcending, leaving this cycle of suffering. Okay. And so, achieving patience of not having to be patient is the highest level. So basically, if we don't give rise to anger and resentment, then there's no need for forbearance, right? In other words, we can bear the unbearable because nothing will cause us to become angry, right? This is the highest level of skill and achievement, right? So ultimately, it's like nothing will bother us. Nothing will make us angry. Okay. That's the highest level, right? Okay, and diligence is the next one, right? To overcome laziness and laxity, or, sluggishness. You could say, there are many words we can use here. Complacency, idleness, indolence, remiss or negligent in discipline. Okay, right. So, it's an aspect of diligence is an aspect of the other 5 paramitas. In other words, So remember, and when we talked about the 6 paramitas, I said that these are orthogonal to each other. They're not like independent. Basically, diligence kind of is used, you can say, or practiced in all of the other ones too. Okay, so without diligence, a Tao cultivator will have a problem with ferrying themselves. Okay, so so how can then, we cultivate, to ferry other people, right? So if we don't have that, if we're kind of lazy about cultivating ourselves or whatever, then we can't really ferry other people because we're not really ferrying ourselves. Right? So cultivate always has to be diligent in order to save ourselves and others as well. Okay. And then the 5th one, we have is samadhi or concentration, right? So overcome disorderliness and restlessness, or, the disordered, the messy, or whatever, scattered mind, unsettled mind, disturbed mind. Okay. Basically, there are 2 types. I don't know. They're called like Patriarch Zen and also Tathagata Zen or whatever. Or Dhyana, actually. But, so the 6th patriarch says, externally detached from forms is dhyana, internally settled is samadhi. Okay, so, but, you combine them, we just use samadhi or concentration again is kind of like, it's not really, doesn't capture the whole thing. But, so samadhi does not have a definite form. In other words, and this 6th patriarch also said, it's not sitting there in meditation, okay, but rather it's practiced anytime and anywhere. Okay, so it's a state of mind. It's not a state of, our physical being, that we have to sit there in quietude. It's basically the mind, you can say the calm composure of mind, the stillness of the mind, even when, like it says there, samadhi is stillness in both quiescence and motion. So, quiescence, yes, we know about when you can sit there in a quiet room and meditate and not think about anything, not do anything. But, that's not as useful as if we can be in that state of stillness, even when we are in motion, when we're doing things. Okay. Okay, so that's the higher level, right? Okay, and finally we get, the wisdom or prajna wisdom. All right, so wisdom overcomes ignorance and delusion, and also like, say obsession, infatuation, foolishness, stupidity. Okay, so they're like 3 types. Okay, there's the you can say the word or the language based prajna or wisdom, the contemplation prajna or wisdom, and the ultimate reality prajna or wisdom. Okay, so wisdom is very important, right? It's the beacon of our cultivation. So it's the light that shines, that allows us to see where we're going, right? To allow us to cultivate properly, all right? It's wisdom internally, right? It's able to break through ignorance, to purify the 3 karmas, or the 3 karmas of our, action, speech, and thoughts, right? And to awaken the self. And externally, it's able to break through the evils and demons, right? To clear the confusion of sentient beings and also to awaken others. Okay, so Bodhisattva wisdom is achieved in the liberation of sentient beings, right? Compassion is the mother of wisdom and the cause of liberation, the seed, or maybe the seed of liberation, whatever, cause of liberation. Okay, so therefore, so it starts from compassion, right? And so only by exerting the power of compassion can wisdom be enabled and liberation be obtained. So that's why they go hand in hand. They go together. So that's why Bodhisattva is all about compassion, expressing that compassionate mind, they say the mind of the bodhicitta, okay, the mind. And as a result of that compassion, that great compassion, this wisdom can also come out, okay. So again, to achieve that compassion, that great compassion, though, is also to get rid of the self, that ego. Okay. And so once you get rid of the ego, then you've gotten rid of attachments, the desires, all that stuff. So that's why I was saying that earlier. We have to get rid of those to get the wisdom. Okay. So, but we can get rid of all that if we can really, practice or, express this great compassion. All right. So realization of the Bodhisattva Path, right? It's the quickest and simplest way to achieve cultivation, right? Or the quickest and simplest way to achieve cultivation is to practice the Bodhisattva Way. Okay. So, basically these points here, So although the Bodhisattva Way is harder, and requires earnest effort, right? We can attain eternal liberation and leave a lasting name and legacy, right? So why not do it, right? The other practices, like in religious practices, it's not the way of the Bodhisattva. Those are kind of the lower vehicles, if you will, or the middle vehicle, and they will take a lot longer, okay? They might be easier to do, of course. They're easier to do, but again, it's not the quickest way, to achieve what we want to achieve, okay? Which is, ultimately become Buddha, but also to transcend this cycle of suffering. All right. So, how do we do this in practice? First, don't seek comfort, right? For most of us, we seeking comfort is, that's, that's what we like to do as humans, seeking comfort. What's comfortable for me. Okay. So, people don't like to get out of their comfort zone, right? A selfish person cannot relinquish, right? And even if he's able to let go, or give up a certain amount, right? He can't give it all up. Okay. Give it all of it. Right? If he seeks comfort, then he will, be afraid of hardship and cannot withstand tests, right? So then, it is difficult to be inspired and motivated and practice the Bodhisattva Way, right? So, again, we have to have that courage and fearlessness to, face hardships and difficulties, right? And the tests. Okay. So, if we can't do that, then it'll be very difficult to succeed on the Bodhisattva path. Okay. All living beings. Okay. So we have to care for all living beings. All living beings, and we have to think that all living beings and us, we are born from the same root. Okay. But because of different, encounters, circumstances, all sentient beings went their separate ways, right? So today, as I am saved first, I received the Tao. Okay. So, I will think of all sentient beings, all beings that are sinking in the sea of suffering, right? And initiate a great compassion and vow to rescue all living beings from this abyss of suffering. Okay. So, we have to think of all the sentient beings, the suffering that they are going through. Obviously it's due to their ignorance and delusions, but try to at least awaken them. Okay. The wish. Okay. So establish a wish or vow. The wish or vow must be established first, and then the goal is clear, right? What we're trying to achieve, in order to generate motivation, right, to endure on this road of cultivation and to go smoothly. So just like Guanyin Bodhisattvas, hearing the cries for help and saving those who are suffering, Manjushri Bodhisattva, he's teaching or guiding all living beings, and Siddhikarma Bodhisattvas, he's saving the souls in the underworld, right? They all have clear goals for their efforts. Okay. And then finally, so we have to learn the dharmas and the methods. So the foundations of all beings are different, right? Their temperament are different, and the methods suitable for practice are also different. So when teaching the sentient beings and are guiding them, we have to constantly learn new methods, right? Whatever is appropriate for them. Right? Only when sentient beings get the right medicine for their disease can it be helpful to them, right? I mean, if the person has a headache and, you give them something just, that treats treats something else, then that's useless. So again, in our methods, when we try to guide or teach people, we have to be aware of what they need. Okay, we can't just do it. Say, one size fits all. One size does not fit all. Okay, so that's why we have to have wisdom to be able to, obviously also knowledge as well, but more importantly, wisdom to be able to adapt, to be able to, kind of at least be aware of what their need is, and so that we can kind of speak to their need. Okay. And then so we also have to finally take action, which is very important, right? So practicing Bodhisattva Path, if we just say the words, right, we know the knowledge, and then we can say these things, but without taking action, then basically we don't achieve anything, or it'd be very difficult to achieve anything, right? So we have to be practical, right? Learn from experience. We can elevate ourselves from our expenditure of effort, right? And we can, we radiate love and compassion from our caring of others. Okay, so then we will achieve in the selfless benefiting of all beings. All right. Okay, finally. Okay, so we kind of discussed the way of the Bodhisattva and what's extraordinary about the Tao Temple. Hopefully it's useful in one's practice and cultivation of the Bodhisattva Way. Right, so basically we want to cultivate the Bodhisattva Way, not the Arhat Way. Okay, so practice of this 10 Tao, this Tao that we have here today, is the Bodhisattva Way. We start with awareness and awakening of others, and also to awakening ourselves. Okay, we should not be focused solely on personal awakening and cultivation, right? So that's the way of the Arhat and the red era. Okay, so because we're now in the white era, so that's essentially going backward, right? It's not consistent with how we should cultivate in the white era. Receiving Tao. Receiving Tao can be called the understanding of the mind and seeing the nature, right? The conscience has been revealed to us, right? When we receive the Tao, the only thing left is to see the nature, or in seeing the nature to become the Buddha. Okay, so actually make it, to realize it. Okay, so not just see it, get a glimpse of it, but actually to become it, to realize it. Okay, make it real, and then being aware of and also awakening others. So as long as we implement it from awakening others, and when we cultivate to the perfection of awakening the self and others, then we will become a Buddha. Right, so this is the preciousness of receiving the Tao first and then cultivating later or afterwards. Okay, and so that's the most extraordinary aspect of the 10 Tao Temple. Okay, now to practice the Bodhisattva Way, we must not only master the spirit and characteristic behavior of the Bodhisattva, but also implement it through actions. Right, rather than just knowing it without practice. Right, we must possess the 4 elements of compassion, wisdom, vows or willingness, and practice or deeds to truly qualify as a practitioner of the Bodhisattva Way. Okay, so these are kind of the 4 elements: compassion, wisdom, vows, and practice. We can't leave those. All right, and then. Finally, you can say, we'd say that the material adequacy, the Dharma, what I call community, and setting. Okay, so the importance of these things. All right, so these are basically 4 essentials of Tao cultivation, right? And they're all indispensable because in cultivation, right? So in speaking about the material adequacy, what I mean is that if we don't have money, if we're like in, extreme poverty, and, getting a meal is a problem, right? It becomes very difficult to concentrate on cultivation, right? So basically, people who are in that situation, it's very difficult to try to ferry them because they're just looking for the next meal, okay? They're trying to struggle to survive, right? So that's kind of, there's a bare minimum that we need to have, to be able to so that that's not a worry, that does not become an obstacle to our cultivation, right? If there's no Dharma, right? So how can we ferry or liberate ourselves and others, right? And if there's no community, or basically you can say partners or companions or, in cultivation, then when we encounter setbacks or difficulties, then no one who's going to help us, right? Who's going to come to help guide us or whatever. And then how then can we cultivate from beginning to end with continuous diligence, right? So we need, we have to help each other. So this path of cultivation, path of the Bodhisattva, we're not walking it alone, okay? And I don't mean also that, obviously the Bodhisattvas, Buddhas are with us, but, we still rely on, other fellow cultivators, to help us along the way, all right? So if there is no, temple also, or setting, okay, for cultivation, right? So how can we have a meeting place where we can gather, ferry people, receive Tao, and listen to the scriptures and Dharma. Okay, so obviously, right now we have a virtual setting, virtual meeting place. But yeah, this is where we can talk about the Dharma and scriptures, but to receive the Tao, we can't do it virtually. Okay, so that has to be done in person, in a place. Okay, so that's important. So basically from this, we can see the importance of, we have to have that material adequacy or sufficiency, the Dharma. We have to have that community or companionship, if you will, and also a setting or place for Tao cultivation, right? So therefore, we have to value these, right? And also to protect and support them together. Okay, so and so that the temple, the Tao community can carry on continuously, so that the development of Tao affairs can be passed on from generation to generation, and the gospel of the heavenly Tao can be spread forever in the world. Okay, so that's basically it. This is kind of try to kind of introduce what it is to, what's the spirit of cultivation as a bodhisattva. I mean, it kind of builds up on all the other stuff. But it's a little bit more specific. So we have to it's basically, remember the compassion. We have to develop that great compassion, for all sentient beings, and treat all sentient beings as if we are one. Okay. So, and from that, we develop that wisdom, to be able to vary ourselves and others, we have to establish the vows to, out of that compassion as well, to then give us that greater force. And of course, we have to put it all in practice. Okay. So, if I had said anything wrong or made mistakes, I asked the Buddhas for forgiveness, and also I asked transmitting masters and lecturers for their corrections. Thank you.